I have the marriage that most men deeply desire but don't believe they can have. My wife often tells me that the world needs more men like me, and I don't share this to boast, but to display contrasts between this and my last 5-year relationship with my ex-fiance, who told me she didn't want to have children with the man that I was becoming and had an abortion while I was a detective on the SWAT team in New Orleans 1 year after my partner was shot and killed, and we then called off the wedding. I have now coached over 850 clients over the last 7 years, and in this video I'm going to compress the top 16 relationship changing truths that I have learned thus far. Welcome back to the Make Men Godly Again podcast. I am your host, Dylan Warder, and in this episode, if you take these lessons, these truths, and you actually apply them, they will absolutely transform your relationship. Let's get started. Number one, you can figure it out in this relationship or you'll be forced to do it in the next. Changing her name is not going to change the outcome. Why? Because it's not going to change you. Most men jump from relationship to relationship or give up on the relationships because they are not willing to change themselves, and they point the finger and blame the woman. She's too controlling. She's not healed. She's insecure. And that may be true. But the reality is, in these moments, there is an opportunity. There's a need for your growth, but there's also opportunities for growth. Everything that you're experiencing in a relationship is a reflection of the work that you still need to do on yourself as a man and as a leader. In the beginning with Donna, I wasn't used to having as much conflict in my relationship as we were having. I wasn't used to raising my voice at each other. Us raising our voice at each other. I wasn't used to us cussing at each other, because in my last relationship, we'd only had a few fights within that 5 years. And so I thought that all of the conflict was her fault, that it was her work to do. And if she just figured out how to not escalate things and not be so combative or controlling or being so easily triggered, that our relationship would be way better. But that was the wrong way of thinking about it. Yes, she had her work to do, but I also had mine. And in all of the work that she had to do, there was a mirror being held up to me of the ways in which I could become a better man, a better leader. And those inefficiencies, the lack of skills and traits that I needed to be able to hold a space for her to work through hers and not to continuously make it worse, was really the work that I needed to do. And so you have to understand that your relationship is a mirror. The person that you end up attracted to, that you're drawn to, that you end up becoming a couple with, is somebody who is going to challenge you. They are going to call out, right, without indirectly or directly, they're going to call out the parts of you that you need to work on. And so whatever you're experiencing in a relationship, there is always something that you can work on that can decrease the problem, minimize the problem, and solve the problem. But very often we instead focus on what the other person is doing. And in the beginning, I made this mistake. Now in my last relationship, because there wasn't much conflict, because she was very passive and didn't address things, I didn't have this opportunity to work on this. And so looking at this, you have to understand that the parts of you that are playing a role in the conflict, in the problems, whether it's trust issues, communication issues, lack of connection because of a lack of communication, whatever it is, you can work on it in this relationship and you can become a better man, or you will absolutely be forced to do it in the next relationship. For me, one of the number one things that I really had to work on was emotional control and not matching her energy every time conflict took place and she was emotionally charged. I would often try to have patience, but I'd lose it very quickly. And then I would end up matching her energy, losing control of my emotions. And that made it very difficult for us to resolve anything. So whether it is a skill or a trait, there is something within you that needs to be developed, that can be developed, absolutely, in order for you to minimize or resolve a lot of the problems that you're having in a relationship. And again, if you do not, and you throw in the towel because you're not willing to do the work, you will then go back into the dating world, or you'll get a divorce, and then go back into the dating world, and you'll be forced to do that again, because every single thing that's coming up comes down to the same foundational needs and concepts that we're going to cover in this video that every woman needs in order to be a peaceful, soft, feminine woman that you want her to be. So if you look back at all your relationships and there's similar problems, it was not them. it was you. At the end of the day, the common denominator is you. Running to the next relationship just brings you back to the starting line. I got Donna to understand this with me very early on in our relationship, and with her being already married and divorced, me being engaged and calling off the wedding, and taking 2 years each of us to work on ourselves and then step back into dating, we were very serious and we did not want to go back into the dating world if we didn't have to. So we committed to the work that we needed to do as individuals, and it worked. So just remember, you can figure it out in this relationship, or you will be forced to do it in the next. Number 2, willingness without ability is worthless. This is a matter of intention versus skill. The false belief here is, well, at least I'm trying. The reality is, if you are trying to work on poor reactions, but the only time you are working on it is in the spontaneous moment and opportunity that presents itself where the thing that creates the poor reaction is being triggered, if that is the only time you're working on it, it is going to be very difficult, if not impossible, for you to actually change the behavior. This requires you to do the work in between the actions, which requires an ability to do it. If you are just willing to, and you are saying that you're trying, but you're really not doing the work, it's not going to work. And this is frustrating because you want to stop reacting poorly. You get frustrated with yourself, and sometimes you get frustrated with yourself, but it comes out like you're taking it out on her. But you want to change this behavior. You want to build the emotional control and to be the healthy, masculine, grounded man who can handle her when she is emotional or stressed out and be that safe space for her. You want to be able to treat the way that you would if she ran to you for physical safety, the same way as if she's running to you for emotional safety. But often it is very difficult to do that. And it's even more difficult if the only time you're trying to do better is in the moment where you fail the most. Most people, not just men, do not have the ability, do not have the discipline and the accountability to do the work in between those moments and those triggers or conflicts in order to improve. Even for myself, 3 months into my relationship with Donna, I hired a coach. As a coach, I paid a man a significant amount of money to hold me accountable for 3 months because I had battles with my ego and judgment and insecurities that I was struggling with winning those battles, and it was causing more conflict. And she was trying to do the work on certain things, and I was struggling to support her in those because I had my own work to do. So even if you have the tools, like I did and do, to do the work on yourself, there still may be a need to involve somebody else, to get the support from another man in order to be able to maximize the probability that you actually overcome them and speed up the process to minimize the amount of damage that is done to the communication and trust and intimacy and connection in the relationship while you're doing the work. So both the willingness and ability are required in order to overcome these things, in order to do the work inside of this relationship. And if you don't have that ability, which you probably don't, then it is important that you bring someone else in, you hire someone who can enable you and help you to do that work. So, because at the end of the day, it's going to have to be done either way, right? Lesson 1, that work is going to have to be done. So if you can't figure out how to do it yourself, it makes sense to invest in actually getting help so that you can do it. And the right person will equip you properly to be able to then be able to overcome any problems in the future in your relationship on your own, because then they will give you the ability. And effort without structure creates frustration. Even in times where Donna told me she's going to work on this, I didn't just accept that. I asked, how? How are you going to work on this? Because without measurable actions, there is no accountability. Number 3, you must learn to lead yourself before you can expect her to follow your lead. If you cannot go to bed at the same time every night and get up at the same time every morning, how do you expect her to be able to follow your lead? Or how can you just expect her to trust you if she watches you not be able to lead yourself? She is watching everything that you do. And she's keeping a record, consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously, of what you say you're going to do and whether or not you do it. And that is with yourself, with other people, and with her. If you do not lead yourself, stewarding your body, your being, your business, your money, your relationship with her, she will not and cannot get to a point where she feels safe and secure in a relationship with you in the present moment, let alone in the future, which she is constantly assessing whether or not a future with you is a safe bet. I feel like so many men hear me say this and it goes in one ear and out the other as if they know it, but if they knew it, they would understand the power of it and they would prioritize it. In my last relationship, I stopped working out, I stopped eating clean, I started drinking excessively, I put on 50 pounds, I was not present, I had lost all of the habits that got me to where I was and how it got me the relationship in the first place. And somehow I was still confused that she didn't want to have sex with me. And even when she did, I could barely last because I was unhealthy. So she probably was the good thing because she didn't want to be there anyways. But I was still confused and frustrated, just completely asleep to the fact that my leadership was the problem. And the result of that relationship was a result of my leadership. So with knowing that she is watching every single thing you do, she was watching every single thing I was doing. And so there was a becoming of a man that she did not want to build a family with, that she did not feel safe and secure with. Now fast forward to my current marriage. My wife Donna has now watched me for 5 years wake up every single morning between 3:30 and 4:30 for the most part, do a cold plunge or cold shower, depending on where we're living in this time, and then spend an hour, 2 hours with God, doing my Bible stacking and direct communion with God. That's been for the last 2 years. Then work out. That's been for the last 5 years. Wake up, do that, work out, and then spend 30 minutes on a walk with her connecting, prioritizing our relationship before then getting into work and executing on the way that my calendar is laid out, executing everything on my calendar throughout my workday, and then coming back home, doing a 30-minute walk with her, disconnecting from my work, and being in bed and passed out by 9 p.m. every single night. By me leading myself this way and also showing up in my relationship with her that way, she went from a hyper independent, hypercritical, combative, I don't need no man boss babe to the soft, feminine place of peace that she is now, who is an incredible partner who supports me, loves me, respects me, appreciates me, desires me, admires me. Everything that I could want, she now is. But she couldn't become that if I didn't become the man that I am today. And a big part of that is first learning to lead myself. Women do not follow charisma, they follow consistency. So if you're experiencing relationship problems right now and feel like something else is going to solve it first, the solving order is off. The first thing that you have to do, and yes, this takes time and effort, is actually start to lead yourself properly. Until you do that, you cannot expect her to follow your lead. Number 4, trust isn't a feeling, it's a ledger. Trust is accumulative evidence. This builds on 3. How you build trust with yourself is the amount in which you trust yourself is the overall sum of your kept and broken agreements over a long period of time. So however many times you said you're going to do something and then did it, if that outweighs the amount of times that you have said you're going to do something and didn't do it, you may have some confidence. But the scale is always changing depending on how often you are doing what you say you're going to do. With her, it is built the same exact way, except because she's watching you and your own agreements with yourself, it is not just about how often you keep or break your agreements with her, but it's also about how much you keep and break your agreements with yourself. So coming into this, there's micro agreements and macro agreements as well. Micro agreements are things like telling her that you will take the dog for a walk before you go to work, or that when you get home, you'll take care of the dishes or the kids. And whether or not you do that, either strips away a layer of trust and then applies it to the masculine shield that she has to protect herself from the inability to trust you, or it puts a layer of trust on and it takes it off of that shield, that masculine shield that she has around her that tends to be controlling or critical if she doesn't trust you. The macro agreements are things like not cheating, not lying, not making big decisions that impact both of you without speaking to her first. So to think she should just trust me is a false expectation if you have not built up a track record of keeping your word with yourself and with her. Every time that you say you're going to do something and you actually do it, your word starts to hold more weight. So she won't scoff at you or roll her eyes at you because she'll truly believe the words that are coming out of your mouth. So if you become a man of your word, you will not have to ask for her trust because you will have earned it. And if you earn her trust, that means you also have earned your own trust, which is required for you to have confidence in your communication, confrontation, and everything else that is required for you to have a harmonious, fulfilling relationship. So reassurance does not build trust. Receipts do. Number 5, lead her from a healthy masculine state or you will find yourself being led by an unhealthy masculine version of her. And understand that this conversation of masculine and feminine is really a biological conversation of how God designed us with polarity. And understanding this will give you an incredible advantage in accomplishing a healthy dynamic within your relationship that can sustain the attraction and passion for a long period of time. The female predominant hormone is estrogen. The male predominant hormone is testosterone. The way that these hormones interact and these energies interact is like two magnets. If you try to force the same size of two magnets together, they will repel each other. And so in order for them to attract each other and come together, one has to flip. This is why an unhealthy masculine woman will often attract an unhealthy feminine man, and how an unhealthy feminine man will attract an unhealthy masculine woman. It requires a healthy masculine man to help a unhealthy masculine woman to switch into a feminine woman, a soft feminine woman, right? My marriage is an example of this. The other major hormone that's at play here is cortisol, the stress hormone. So if a woman is really stressed out and she has high levels of cortisol, it can convert her estrogen into testosterone and bring her estrogen levels down. And it is her estrogen that helps her handle stress and regulate her emotions. So if she is really stressed, then it not only is the cortisol levels really high, but it's bringing her estrogen levels down that would help her actually handle that stress. The opposite is also true for you, where if you have high levels of cortisol, it can convert your testosterone into estrogen. And so your ability to handle stress is based on your level of testosterone. And so if that lowers and your estrogen increases, then you will really struggle with your emotional stability and your emotional control. Now, a woman's number one priority that she cannot change is safety and security. She is constantly assessing how safe and secure she is. And this is not just physically or financially, but mentally and emotionally. That is why it is no longer enough for a man to provide only physically and financially. They also need to provide mentally and emotionally. In order for a woman to feel safe and secure in a relationship and the future of that relationship in a way that minimizes her stress and keeps her in a hormonal balance, in a way that would allow her to operate predominantly out of her feminine, is by the man leading from a healthy masculine state. This means the man has to be confident. It is very hard to be grounded or to make really good decisions or to be able to problem solve or to be able to lead if you are not confident in yourself, which requires you to trust yourself. Because every time you strip away a layer of that trust yourself by not doing what you say you're going to do, you also strip a layer of confidence and self-belief that you have. So a healthy masculine man is not just confident and secure in himself. He is mentally and emotionally grounded and stable. He's decisive. He possesses self-control and discipline. And he is able to solve problems without unnecessarily involving her and creating stress in her life. So if you are insecure, like I was, I had these different insecurities. If you are battling with self-control and inconsistent, struggling with discipline, if you're struggling to make decisions or problem solving, if you are just lacking confidence in yourself, you're struggling to regulate your emotions and control them, or mentally you're just all over the place, then it is going to be very hard for her to be able to rest in her feminine and for you to be able to get to experience the best version of her that God designed her to be. Instead, she is going to be controlling and hypercritical and combative and eventually cold and completely disconnected from you. But I can promise you, that version of her, that soft, feminine version of her, absolutely exists. The question is, are you going to become the man where that version of her can exist with you? Because safety creates femininity, and if you don't lead, she will. Number 6, don't create conditions to avoid the work, create conditions to support the work. Far too often, men, when they have an insecurity, they handle it by creating rules or boundaries or avoiding certain topics to protect themselves from that insecurity being triggered, instead of creating conditions that would help support them overcoming it. When Donna and I first started dating, we were very open and honest with each other, getting to know about each other and each other's past. And by getting to know some of each other's past, it brought up some insecurities on both sides. And for me, learning about the last 2 men that she had dated, one of them being a very well-known entrepreneur, that if you're an entrepreneur, you probably know who he is, and the other one being a professional athlete, both of them made more money than me and were in better shape than me. And so it brought up an insecurity in me that I was not aware of. So I would see her, we would go to the gym together, and we wouldn't work out together, but we'd be in the gym together, and I would be seeing dudes come up to her and approach her probably every day. And half of them wouldn't bother me at all. But I noticed that some did bother me, where I was like, I wanted to know how it went. And when I finally looked back at it and assessed it, like, what makes that guy bother me, but this guy not? And what had bothered me was that he was in better shape than me. And so it was bringing up that same insecurity, but in a different way. And so instead of me creating conditions to protect myself from it, like some men would be like, oh, like just, shut them down immediately, or they'll tell their wife or girlfriend how to handle that situation in a way that will make him feel better. Or they will create these boundaries, and they'll call them healthy boundaries, that will just protect them from that insecurity coming up instead of doing the work to overcome it. And so for me, when this came up, it was a struggle for a little bit, because the dude that was an entrepreneur, he bought her like a whole wardrobe of his friend's brand. And it was really nice clothes. Like, I actually liked the brand, but every time that she wore it, it made me think of him and her being with him, and it brought up that insecurity. And so these different situations that were bringing up this insecurity in me, I ended up just being honest with her of like, hey, this is what's coming up for me in these situations that I'm trying to work through, and I'm struggling with it a little bit. So I ask that when it does come up, that instead of getting annoyed, you can just support me, and like, if I need reassurance, offer that, and then I'm going to do the work on my end to overcome this, which is really get in better shape and make more money. And so some people will, I would say softer people, will have a different take on that. They will talk about how like, oh, well, like, you just need to accept that you're enough, and so on. Like, yes, I know I'm enough, but the reality is that I need to focus on what I can control that is going to help me feel better about my financial situation and my body in the mirror. Because regardless of her or anything else, I was not happy with it. And so what was being held up for me was a mirror of where I was at compared to where I want to be as well. And so it was just another way of a reflection for me of the work that I needed to do, and it was just coming up in a different form. But I see a lot of men create some crazy boundaries and boundaries. I don't think that that's what it is. It's rules and ways of protecting themselves from their triggers instead of leaning into it and doing the work to overcome it. And I think the best way that you can do that is by being honest with your girlfriend or your wife, your spouse. But I think we've also been trained to see that as weakness. But I think that the most powerful, strong, masculine thing you can do is confront your weakness, right? That requires strength. And so insecurities can be seen as a weakness, right? I would identify that as a weakness for me because it then prevents me from showing up as the most powerful man that I can be, whether that's an insecurity that impacts my business. Maybe it impacts how I show up on a stage speaking, or impacts how I am on a sales call, or how I am in the gym, in my relationship, of course. Right? For men that are single, that absolutely plays a huge role in the woman that you think you can approach, in how effective your communication is, because your insecurity comes out in your tonality, and even the confidence that, or how the insecurities come up in conflict. Right? If you don't actually deal with it, it will continuously come up throughout your relationship. It will always be triggered at some point or another, especially if it's around other men. If you feel insecure, if you're at a party or a gathering and you split up from your wife or your girlfriend and you see her talking to another man that you don't know across the way, and you feel some type of way about it, that is going to continue to happen. So part of that may be a trust issue, some stuff we're going to get into. But at the end of the day, the best advice I would give you is to build yourself up and become a man that you believe she would be stupid to cheat on, that she would be stupid to entertain another man, because that's how I feel. And I can tell you right now that I have zero insecurities that come up anymore. I don't worry about any of that. And I know that as soon as my wife is pregnant, even when she was pregnant, she was getting catcalled. But it will happen way more again, especially in Miami, that when she's not pregnant, she's going to be getting hit on anytime she's out in public. And that's okay, because I'm not worried about it. And so if you can't say the same thing, then there's some work that can be done that in itself will take your relationship to a whole new level. And yes, everything that I'm talking about here, every single truth that we're going to discuss here also applies to women. So if your wife is listening to this, or if you're just a woman that's listening to this, all of this applies to you. You just have to think through how it applies to you. But men, even though I'm hyper focused on you, understand that this applies to her. I would say the same thing to her in many ways, not the leadership part, okay, and the work that needs to be done. So don't create conditions to avoid the work. Create conditions that support it. That means asking your spouse for support in it, being honest about it, as well as you doing the work that is required in order to overcome whatever is creating some sort of conflict internally as well as in your relationship. Number 7, peace isn't the absence of conflict, it's the presence of truth. Just because you guys don't argue does not mean that you are in a healthy relationship. This sums up the 5-year relationship that ended by us calling off the wedding. The danger with this truth is that it only takes one of you to be passive and avoidant of confrontation in order for it to silently kill the relationship. If you are a man and you are passive and avoidant of confrontation, it will destroy the relationship way faster because she will lose respect and attraction to you. If the woman is passive and avoidant of confrontation in the relationship, then it typically destructs way slower because we as men don't realize what's happening. We think that because she isn't creating confrontation or complaining in the relationship, that everything is fine. The reality is what we perceive as peace is actually just silent suffering. Just like when you feel the need to be honest with her and talk to her about something, to address something, but then when it comes time to, you talk yourself out of it and tell yourself it's not worth it because you are worried about her poor reaction, how she's going to respond. And so eventually you just tell yourself like, oh, I'll just wait and see if it goes away on its own. She does the same thing because she doesn't want to deal with your poor reaction or your empty words telling her that you're going to work on it, and then don't. And so she thinks to herself, why bother? What you and her both don't realize is that every single time that happens, it adds another brick in the wall of resentment that's building around her heart that's eventually going to keep you out. I'm a prime example of how oblivious and asleep men can be. In that last year of my relationship with my ex-fiance, after she had chosen to have the abortion and told me that she didn't want to have children with the man that I was becoming, we still stayed together for a while. And I was still in my own world, not realizing how bad things were. I was still working 80, 90 hours a week, drinking every night. And I wasn't drinking a lot, but I was having 1, 2 drinks very consistently, and was, on the other side of the couch, scrolling on my phone on Instagram, my fake Instagram, setting up gun deals and stuff. I was still working, right? And thought that I was present with her, but I wasn't. And I went 3 more months. It was then December, and in the same week that my cover got blown in an op, I was in juvenile court, and I get a phone call from her dad, who was a famous musician who never called me, and told me, hey, I just had lunch with Sam, and I thought that you guys were doing amazing. You've always taken really good care of her, and I'm calling you because I love you. If you don't get your stuff together, she is going to leave you. And so she had went home for Thanksgiving alone to Nashville without me, which is another clear sign that I was just oblivious to, because there was not even really any conversation about it, and had a conversation with her dad about where things were at. So I didn't know, but her bags were packed, and I was oblivious to the situation, even though there were so many clear signs. Right? But because she wasn't complaining, she wasn't addressing with me, she thought she was being a good fiance by not putting all this stuff on me of all her complaints, because I was dealing with all of my own survivor's guilt and coping mechanisms and everything that I was battling with after my partner was killed covering my shift. And in doing that and thinking you're being a good fiance or a good spouse by not addressing these things, you're allowing the relationship to die as well. And so it's not the way to handle things. At the end of the day, silent suffering is a compounding tax bill with an unknown interest rate that will always cost you more than you can afford. Do not fool yourself into thinking things are fine just because you don't fight. Number 8, open communication opens legs. It can also be said that closed communication closes legs. Open communication is the willingness and ability for both partners to address wants, needs, feelings, and issues without fear, delay, or distortion. We as men have to understand that for us to desire emotional connection, we need physical connection. But for women to desire physical connection, they need emotional connection. So open communication within your relationship is required in order for you to have a deep level of connection, intimacy, and truly fulfilling and satisfying sex. She has to feel heard, seen, and supported. She has to be able to feel like she can come to you with her truth without fear, without delay, without distortion. If she can feel that with you, if you can create a culture within your relationship where open communication is a standard, then you can have an incredibly increasing deep connection that will maximize your intimacy, that will continuously make your sex life what I've and Donna have gotten to experience. We've, over the years, it started off great, and we continued to see it get better and better and better, and we didn't know it could get better, and then all of a sudden it got better, and we're just, how is this getting better? And it continues to be that way. Where even as she's been pregnant, we're just like, we didn't realize that we could have this. But that's because we had never had the true level of trust and communication that facilitated the connection and the intimacy and the sex that we now have. And because we are constantly growing and evolving and expanding in each of those areas, it continues to get better. Now, I understand that she has likely had poor reactions to your truth and gotten triggered and not handled things well and played a role in the breaking down of open communication of where it's at right now in your relationship. And so you can have her listen to this. But right now, I'm talking to you and I'm focused on helping you focus on what you are in control of, which is being able to show up differently to facilitate and open up this communication again. It requires you to lead this. Every single one of these truths, it requires you to lead. So I want you to think about this. How often Do you avoid and procrastinate difficult conversations because you tell yourself it's not the right time or it's not worth it? How often have you passively waited to see if the problem just takes care of itself because you know that it's just going to turn into another fight? How often do you feel like you can't be 100% truthful and honest with her because you fear that she will judge you or she will have a poor reaction, which will just turn into more problems than you already have? If you feel this way, she likely feels this way, if not worse. And if that is the case, there is a wall that is being built up between you two around her heart that is bricks of resentment because she can't communicate what she needs to with you. And so one of the most powerful things that you can do in your relationship that will change it forever is focus on building open communication where each of you can come to each other without delay, without distortion, without fear, and be honest with your wants, feelings, your needs, or any issues that come up. This is a requirement. It is a prerequisite to having an incredible sex life in your marriage. So you can avoid this or just be discouraged because it's challenging and it'll take time, but that time is going to pass anyways. And relationships are going to be hard anyways. So you may as well do the hard work that is going to lead to things being way easier and way better over time. And you have to lead this because your sex life will never outperform your communication skills. So if you want your sex life to improve, focus on developing the communication skills that are going to facilitate the connection that she needs in order to desire, let alone enjoy sex with you. Real quick, if you're listening to this and you are experiencing a specific problem in your relationship that is causing a lot of stress and you want to solve it, I'm doing a free one-on-one coaching session for those who qualify where we will get to the root cause of that problem and strategize the fastest way to solve it with sustainable results. So if you're interested, go to dylanjwarder.com/solution, book a free call with me, and I look forward to connecting with you and helping however I can. Number 9, what you confront quickly can't kill you. Damage in a relationship is rarely done in a singular event, but instead in the gap of time between an event that causes need for a conversation and actually having the conversation to resolve it. When I was in my training to become a Krav Maga instructor in New Orleans, there was a concept within weapons defense that was attack the attack. And so in this concept, you close the distance between you and the attacker as fast as you possibly can. And in doing that, you then attack their attack. You then strike the attacking arm with one arm that then takes the momentum out of them if they're coming at you with a knife, with a machete, with a bat. You attack it before it actually has full momentum. And then simultaneously, you're striking them in the face, throat, balls, etc., depending on the weapon and the way in which they're coming to attack you. This does not guarantee that you will survive the attack, but it maximizes survival. Inside of your relationship, you have to address threats the same exact way, quickly, by closing the distance between the initial threat and the time you're able to neutralize it. And often in our relationships, the biggest threats that go unnoticed are the truths that go unsaid. And because I made this mistake in my last relationship, I made sure that when I started dating Donna, that I did not make the same mistake again. Instead, I created a culture, a standard within our relationship where we were able to confront things very quickly. Now, at first, because there was so much that we were going through and things that we had to overcome, there was a lot of that confrontation. There was a lot of conflict. And because we had committed to the work and we invited it in, right, it felt like once we were through certain things, then there was these other things that came through. And sometimes it was discouraging. We were wondering, like, is this toxic? Like, should we actually just end this? Will this ever end? And that's because we are so quick to confront things. But it's a matter of confronting them effectively and efficiently. And if you're doing the work in between these moments, then it can fast track a lot of the work. And so for us, we did a lot of that work on the front end where we've now been in a beautiful, amazing place since like end of 2023. So, gosh, 2.5 years. And so I led us to building a culture within our relationship where we confront things very quickly. There is no avoidance of uncomfortable or difficult conversations. We never go to bed mad at each other. If something comes up early in the morning, which often most things come up later in the day when people are, tired, but we definitely had stuff come up in the morning at a time that I would deem very inconvenient because I'm trying to get to work. But as long as we didn't have a responsibility to show up for somebody else, then we would put everything aside in that moment. We drop everything and we would deal with it. Now, if things were really emotionally charged, we would take some time and then we'd come back to it. But we wouldn't let things build up throughout the day, and never do we ever let anything go into the next day unresolved. Now, in the beginning, that wasn't always the case. There's definitely times I'm like, I don't have time for this. I gotta go, and I would leave, and then she would literally not be able to do anything all day because she can't compartmentalize like I can, and she would be pissed, and it would make things worse. Whereas I could just like angrily work and get focused. And yes, I'd be a little, stressed out about what it would look like at the end of the day, where it was not the most efficient thing. But eventually, I started to prioritize the health of our relationship over my ability to do exactly what I said I was going to do that day at the time I said I was going to do it. And so this in itself allowed us to address any threats to our relationship and never let them become bigger threats than they already were or started off as. And with her coming into the relationship with a lot of trust issues and abandonment wounds and childhood trauma that we had to work through, this was really important because it was a part of this masculine shield that she had on that was protecting herself from the possibility that I might be like every other man and her father. So for me to be able to gradually get better, hearing her truth, receiving her truth, and creating a safe space for her to be able to come to me without fear, without delay, without distortion, it actually allowed her to feel safe with me and heal through a lot of what she needed to heal and get to a point where she went from the hypermasculine to the very healthy feminine. But again, it wasn't easy at all. It took a lot of work and repetition and frustration. And so something I don't think I've included in this, and I don't think I did later, is the standard that I set for us, especially early on when she was starting to do the work and take responsibility for the work she needed to do as well, was I don't need you to be perfect, but I do need you to make progress. And so the way to say that is equal on both sides is the standard and expectation is not perfection, it's progress. Right? So as long as we are making progress in the things that we are working on, I'm good. Right? But if you expect your partner to just like overcome it and stop doing it, never do it again because you said you don't ever want to do that again, or that it hurt you, or whatever the case is, that is an unrealistic expectation that will lead to disappointment. You can't match that standard yourself. So why would you try to keep them to that standard when you can't? So at this point, 5 years later, we've had plenty of difficult conversations over the time that she's been pregnant, but we haven't had a true confrontation since July, right? So about 8 months of peace. Even in the difficult conversations, there was no intense emotion or anything of that nature, and it took a lot of work to get there. But in being able to be in this place of peace for so long, it's so much easier. Like I've been free from porn for since 2020, and maybe it was December 2025, so a month and a half ago or so. I was getting in the shower. Her parents were here staying with us for a month from the Philippines, and thought came in of, you should watch porn. I'm like, what? I can count on one hand how many times I'd watched porn in like 6 years. And I'm just like, where is this coming from? Now I knew that I was horny, wanted to have sex with her, and her parents are here. Like, it's not going to happen in nearly the time that I desire it. And so I entertained it, and then I allowed it. And afterwards, I was sitting on the couch when I went back out there, and I just felt off, but spiritually, I felt off. And the next morning, I did a Bible stack, which is the process for those that are interested. You can go to weaponsforchrist.com. This is where I do a men's Bible study and facilitate to help them learn a process to facilitate direct communion with God that I've been now doing for 2 years. It has been just, I can't say enough about it, but not to get too sidetracked on it. I did this Bible stack and had this conversation with God on it, and the result of it was have a conversation with her immediately. Now, the stories that come up for us when we have to have a difficult conversation is the most important thing to be self-aware of, because for me, she was going out of town. She was going to her brother's for a week with her parents. And if I told her the day before, then the story in my head was like, well, then she might be worried that I'm going to do it more. Like, it's going to trigger some old insecurity. It's really bad timing, so on. But the result of my conversation with God was to address it immediately, which is what I do. That's what I've always done. This was something I hadn't really dealt with her. And so leading by example, like I do all of the men that I lead and work with, it only made sense for me to have the conversation with her immediately. So I walked out of my closet, my prayer closet, and came into the room and sat down and was honest with her. Yesterday, I watched porn, and I'm sitting here telling myself all these stories of why I shouldn't have this conversation with you right now, but the reality is, like, I've thought through this. I explained why I entertained it and allowed it to happen. And more so, like, nothing was lacking, like, being clear, like, nothing's lacking from our relationship. I am satisfied, just like, my testosterone's been like increasing, my libido's been increasing, and your parents are with us, and I had a moment of weakness. And she responded really well to it. We had a really good conversation about it, and that was it. And so that's just an example of one of the several difficult conversations we've had over the last 8 months that didn't turn into anything crazy. So being able to develop this habit as a man to confront things quickly and to create a culture and an environment where your spouse can confront things quickly is huge. It's huge. Like the level of safety and security that it brings for both of you, it just allows you to be able to build your relationship and know that there is nothing that has gone unsaid that needs to be addressed. And so there's no unknown threats. Right? And so with the men that I work with, this is one of the number one things that we work on, is not just confronting quickly, but doing it efficiently and effectively. Because if you're just confronting things, but you don't have the communication skills to do it, to actually resolve it and get to the desired outcome, then it's just going to cause more problems, right? And so it requires the ability to confront quickly, and then also the skill to do it effectively. So just understand that delay creates decay. So if you are more passive right now, you're avoidant, and that has become a habit within your relationship, understand that for as long as you tolerate that and you allow it to exist, your relationship is not fine. Like this doesn't exist in a relationship. It's either this, right? Which even if it's at the slightest slant, okay, cool. So it might take way longer for you to get to breakup or divorce or destruction, but that's the place that it's going. It's inevitable. And so if you want it to start to come here, no matter where your relationship is, you want it to go back up, you want to take it to the next level, then it's really important for you to be able to confront these problems quickly. Okay, so that is number 9. Number 10, minimizing her problems maximizes yours. Her threat perception is not wrong, it is just different. But if you treat it like it's wrong, it will give you more threats to perceive. The false belief here is that she is overreacting. And I have done this so many times where I feel like she's being dramatic and overreacting. But the reality is that God biologically designed us to be complete opposites in many ways. And the way in which we perceive threats is one of them. A woman is designed to perceive threats earlier and perceive them to be bigger because it then increases the likelihood that it won't hurt her. A man is designed to have a larger threshold for what he deems a threat and minimizes those threats so that he can prioritize and increase his capacity to prioritize more immediate threats. This is why you will often think that what she sees to be a problem is ridiculous or dramatic or overreacting. But the reality is that God designed her, women, this way, and although it can be annoying because it is different, it also has great value in it. Beyond their own protection and their ability to protect their children as mama bear, the intuition and sense of threat that they have can be applied to many different areas of our lives. Because she was designed differently, she sees things that we as men don't see. Now, I believe myself to be a great judge of character, and I have plenty of irrefutable evidence to prove that to myself. But there has been some times where Donna, with some pretty big business deals, where she had a bad feeling that I didn't have. And because we weren't there in our relationship yet where she felt like she could communicate that to me, she didn't. And the little bit of things that she did mention, I didn't fully respect because I was listening to her through the lens of business acumen, not through the lens of a woman's intuition and how God designed her to perceive threats in a way that is different from mine, in order for us to be able to address all threats together as a couple in unit in a very effective way, right? It's the difference between your peripherals being like this and your peripherals being like this. So I don't make that mistake anymore. But a mistake that I made many times was her addressing small things within our relationship. See, I'm already minimizing it. Small things in our relationship that I deem to be very small or kind of nitpicky, that I then reacted that way, and she then didn't feel heard or seen in it. And because of how I perceived it, I didn't address it as real, even though it was very real to her. I then tolerated that behavior within myself and allowed it to become a bigger problem. And so if she is being what you'd say maybe is hypercritical or nitpicky, yes, it may be possible that she absolutely is being that, and it just is that. But there's also a world where those small things that she is seeing as a potential threat, maybe it's because she saw it in the last 3 exes, and that didn't work out. So now she's worried that those are just signs that this also isn't going to work out. But if you can address it and just consider the possibility that what she is saying is a problem, because if it's a problem for her, it is a problem for you. You just have the instinct and have been designed to minimize those threats if you don't feel like it is immediate, which is also why most men do not move and they don't take action on improving their relationship or their business or their body or anything of that nature until one of the 3 Ds is in their face, right? Death, disease, or divorce. And so this is why it is not good for man to be alone, because if we are only able to perceive or we only prioritize threats that are immediate, then the things that slowly kill us or slowly kill our relationship or slowly kill our confidence and our self-belief, we don't address it as quickly as we would, say, a physical threat or our bank account being low or something of that nature, right? So understand that the sooner that you start taking her perception of threats seriously, and you just consider that it is real, then in doing that, you can handle it differently and understand that she is seeing something that you can't see. She is seeing it earlier, and she is seeing it to be bigger because she knows that if it goes unaddressed, then it will become bigger. And so she is trying to close the distance between the problem and it being addressed, similar to the last lesson. Now, this takes practice because it's not natural for us to take these types of threats at face value. Even me saying threats, we might use quotations because we just don't see it as a threat. But it is way more effective and efficient that you look at these with the lens that she is seeing them through, or you do your best to. Now, this is also hard because it just can kind of like pile more on. And as men, we're already carrying so many burdens and responsibilities that it's easy to feel like she's asking for too much. But by simply hearing her out and truly listening with the intention to understand, it can allow you to see it from her point of view with compassion and increase the probability that you will handle it the right way, which is by truly seeing it as the problem that she's seeing it as, instead of minimizing it. In doing that, it will minimize the probability that it actually becomes a problem. And so by not minimizing her problems, you minimize your problems. So if it's real for her, it's real for you. Dismissing what you think is dramatic only creates more drama for you. Now, number 11, her past is not a record to judge, it is a blueprint to follow. Judgment originates in a combination of primitive survival instincts, cognitive processes, and psychological factors like insecurities and trauma. It is rooted in our brain's need to categorize things and to protect via hypervigilance and reinforce personal values that often ends up manifesting through a defense mechanism of fear or envy or anxiety. The false belief is, I don't need to know about her past. I know who she is right now. So many couples avoid talking about each other's past. And us men especially, because we would rather live in the illusion that we are the only man that she has ever been with than for it to be destroyed by the truth that she also has a past just like us. However fragile your ego is, that's how fragile your relationship is. I'm not speaking from a pulpit. I'm speaking from experience. I have been the man who is holding the double standard and who's an absolute hypocrite and who's judging a woman for far less than what I have done. Now, this was one of the biggest battles that I had when I started dating Donna, and it wasn't because that her past was crazy at all. It was because I had my own fears and insecurities that I still hadn't worked through. And again, I was just this typical man who, thinks that it's okay for men to do this, but for women not to do this. And I held women to a standard I didn't hold myself to. And it led to a lot of challenges, but I also fought that judgment. I fought the things that were coming up inside of me. I didn't just allow it to control me or my behavior, because I knew that it was wrong. And I also knew that no matter what her past was like, mine was way worse. And so I had to constantly kind of remind myself of that, because if not, I would find myself judging her and feeling some type of way about her past. And it was incredibly unfair. But the other reason I fought it was because what I'm about to tell you, which is that I understood that by getting to know her past relationships, her past triggers and trauma, and understanding where it all came from, it would empower me to be able to do differently than what other men had done. It not only helped me have more patience and compassion with the triggers and the things that she was working on healing, but it also gave me a blueprint of what to do and not to do, on what to do not to perpetuate the problems and the trauma that she had, and what to do to help heal them, and what to do to help support her in overcoming them. So I'll give you two examples: trust and the abandonment wounds that Don and I had to overcome. In the trust part, I continuously got upset and pissed off because she was not trusting me, or she was getting triggered and was suspecting and wondering if I was doing anything or would do anything to hurt her. And simple things like, if I had to stay at the office late, like, oh, well, who's there? And things that I would get annoyed with because I didn't understand. But once I understood that she watched her father cheat on her mother throughout her childhood, and then understood the experiences that she had in her relationships over the decade before we met and how these men had failed to show up for her, had betrayed her, had done these things, I then understood why she had trust issues. Before that, I was taking it personal. I'm like, I know I'm a man of integrity. I know that I'm not doing anything where you shouldn't trust me. This doesn't seem fair. I feel like I'm paying the price for all the things that these other men have done, but I didn't know what those other men had done. So I had just assumed and felt like it was unfair, and I was upset about it. And so I would then respond poorly to her having her trust issues triggered. And so by her having that come up and then me responding poorly to it, it only made things worse. And so once I understood it and I had the compassion for it, I was able to have the patience for it. I was able to ground myself and not see that moment as an attack, but instead a moment where I could help her heal. And so in doing this, it truly gave me a blueprint and made me ask more questions. I mean, okay, what was the best thing about your last marriage? What was like really good about it? And I'll tell you what, a prior version of me would have never been able to ask that question. But it was questions like that also showed me, the things that did work really well in her relationships and that she valued. And so I was able to see both sides, not just the negative side of it. And in doing that, it made her feel safe and supported. And because so many people avoid talking about their past, we don't get to talk about our past a lot. Because if I want to reminisce about the paragliding experience I had jumping off that mountain in Switzerland, I have to do it with a friend because she knows that my ex was there, right? And might get triggered if that was the type of relationship I was in. Instead, I could talk about it. We both actually had a trip to Switzerland with our exes, and we can talk about them and our past without anything coming up because we've talked about so much of it. And it doesn't bring up insecurities. But so many people live in a prison of only being able to talk about the past that they've shared together or past experiences that don't involve another partner, when our past relationships are one of the places that we grow the most. And so if the majority of our growth has happened in relationships, then we are then unable to talk about them, about how we became the person that we are today. So by creating a culture within our relationship where we feel safe to actually talk about our past without it turning into a fight, she was able to feel more safe and start to trust me more. So by understanding her past and her feeling safe to share it with me, I was able to understand how to help her overcome the trauma of her past so that it wouldn't continuously affect our relationship in the present or in the future. Now, with the abandonment wound, her family, her parents left at 18, went back to the Philippines and left her in the United States just to figure out life. And between that and a few other experiences, she had this deep abandonment wound. And so when we would have arguments and conflict, if I ever got to a point where like I need to walk away or I'm going to lose my mind, and I left without saying anything or leaving in that way, or I'm like, I can't take this, I can't deal with this, I'm done with this, whatever I said that was like that, it would trigger this abandonment wound that would bring out a different version of her that was this terrified, scared little girl, but it was just a completely different version of her that was scary, and it made me nervous more so for her. Eventually understanding, at first I'd be like, you're crazy. This is insane behavior. You need to relax. And it made me concerned about a future together. But once I understood where it came from, once I understood what was truly happening inside of her in that moment when I would walk out or leave and use certain language with walking out, understanding that that is what was being triggered, allowed me to then sit down with her and figure out, okay, well, there's going to be times where I'm going to need to create space. How do I do it in a way that you feel safe? And so from there, we got clear that if I needed to create space, or we needed to create space, that I would then communicate, I'm getting to a point where I can't control my emotions. I need some space. Give me 15, 20 minutes, and then we'll come back to this. And then I would then leave, or we'd create space. And the time period was important because it communicated that it was temporary. But if I just said, I need space, even space, the word space could translate to permanent for her in that moment. And so by doing this, I was able to understand how to help her heal this based on my reactions or reactions to what was coming up for her. So as a man, you have to work through the judgment. Part of this is working through the judgment you have with yourself, but there is so much value in getting to understand her past. Because it's not, I would even argue that if you don't know your spouse's past, you don't know them. And if you don't know them, you aren't actually in love with them, you're in love with an idea of them. And many will argue that I don't need to know about their past, I know who they are right now. And maybe there is a little bit of truth to that, but the other truth to it is that that is just a lie that you tell yourself to protect your fragile ego from the truth of their past. Because if you really love them and were in love with them, knowing about their past wouldn't change it. So whatever you can't handle about her past is your work to do. And whatever about her past is causing problems in the present, that's her work to do. If you want to have a bright future together, you have to be able to talk about each other's dark past. Number 12, her healing may not be your responsibility, but becoming a safe space for that healing is. Your reactions will either perpetuate her trauma or your responses can help heal it. Now this builds on number 11. There's a difference here because there's the judgment that we battle with in being able to talk about our past and help be able to overcome some of the things in our past that are showing up in the present moment within our relationship. Then there's the understanding of the micro reactions and how that sets up an environment to either be able to heal from past relationships and childhood trauma or whatever it is that you're bringing, whatever baggage you're bringing to the relationship, which everybody is. I don't care what you say as a man, because I hear so many men say that she has it and I don't. You do. And the fact that you are unwilling to admit that is a huge part of your problem. And in doing this, in being able to become a man who can respond to the way that she is coming at you, the way that she is addressing things, that when she is getting triggered, when she is upset, that is one of the most masculine things that you can do. One of my greatest achievements as a man was becoming a strong, healthy, masculine leader that could help facilitate my wife's healing. When we met, when I first started dating her, the level of work that it seemed like we had to get through in order to get to the place we're at now was discouraging, because I would continue to try to get better at my reactions and holding space. Felt like I could hold space for all my clients, but I kept failing to hold space for her, the one person that mattered the most. And so as I progressed and I watched her start to progress in her healing, where her reactions and her triggers started to decrease and started to become less frequent. And then I watched our conflict start to stabilize, where we could have a difficult conversation without it getting out of control or getting out of control as fast. And watching that progress was one of the most rewarding things to see, because then as she began to heal more and more, I began to see more of who she truly was before the world got its hands on her, and before all these different experiences between her childhood and her relationships piled up on her in a way that made her very defensive and protective to minimize the probability of those things happening to her again. And so by continuously gaining a deeper understanding of it and continuing to do the work that I had to do on myself to become a safe space for her healing, and for her to know that and see that work in me built such a different level of love and respect for each other, because while I was doing that for her, she was also seeing me continue to grow as a man and continue to show up for her in a way that truly helped her start to heal and overcome these things. And when you are battling something like trust issues or abandonment wound, and you've started to understand it, but at the same time it keeps coming up and it keeps causing problems and it keeps creating stress and worry and fear in your life, and all of a sudden you start to feel that less and you start to feel the healing actually taking place, the gratitude that you have for your partner who's helping facilitate that. When you have had this cause problems in all of your other relationships, it brings a different level of connection to the relationship that truly has strengthened us in so many ways. And so for me to be able to help facilitate her going from this hyper masculine, independent boss babe, I don't need no man attitude, I'll never let a man lead, I don't trust men, being hypercritical and harsh of me and combative, to who she is now. The soft, feminine, beautiful woman who is now a healthy partner, who has now become a stay-at-home mom, that she used to laugh at the idea of that as well, because she has her own incredible God-given talents and dreams. And a part of that dream was becoming a mom, but because she watched her mom find herself in a position where she had to depend on her father, and through depending on her father to provide her, she saw her mom be stuck in an unhealthy relationship. She never wanted to find herself in that place either. And so she was very afraid of the idea of, well, she wanted me to be able to fully provide, but she also wanted to be able to walk away at any time and not be dependent on my financial provision in order for her to do that. And so it required a lot of healing for her to get to this place where she could step out of the business mind, the boss babe, and the pursuing the big dreams just temporarily, because she will still go on and pursue those things once she gets through this phase of becoming a new mother. But in order for her to step into her feminine and truly rest there, she had to do a lot of healing work on her own. And through our relationship, it was able to happen much faster, right? Because if we didn't front load our relationship and I didn't figure this out early on, then the problems would have happened for way longer, and our relationship wouldn't have stabilized as quick as it did, and it still took way longer than either of us thought. Way longer. And again, I think I mentioned this earlier, that there was times where we were questioning, like, is this toxic? Like, we keep getting through these problems, but other ones are coming up. But again, we were inviting it in and we were leaning into it. And to be able to do that is hands down one of my greatest achievements as a man, far greater than any award or medal that I've gotten, or any business achievement that I have reached, or speaking engagement, or anything. It just far outweighs all of those, because I get to see that award and reward every single day in who I'm now married to. So I would argue, and I also, I know that it's in the amount of time that it takes to get through those challenges together can be discouraging, but it's worth it. It is absolutely worth it. And even if it took twice as long than it did, now knowing how worth it was, because both of us are truly committed to that work, I would do it all over again. I'd absolutely do it all over again. And so I would argue to you that if you're going to be with her, it absolutely is your responsibility to become a safe space for her healing. That is only going to make you a better man. It is only going to make you a better listener. It is only going to make you even more effective in business, because the same skills it takes to have a high stakes negotiation with investors, or debates with your business partners as you're progressing in the direction of the company, whatever you do for a living, it's going to make you better. And it's also going to make you better for your children. And it's going to allow the two of you to be able to communicate in front of them and have difficult conversations inside your household without it creating more trauma for them. And one of our goals as men always is to be the chain breaker, for us to not hand down the same problems and issues and trauma that our parents unknowingly handed down to us. And so if there's one thing that you can do that is going to just cascade into every other area of your life, it is you becoming a safe space by becoming the grounded, truly confident man who has self-control of his emotions and his mouth, his tongue. And so in this, that is your responsibility. It is your responsibility. No, the healing work is not your responsibility, but becoming a safe space for it absolutely is. Number 13, solving relationship problems will make every other problem easier to solve. Whether you are in the relationship that is having consistent conflict and disconnection, or you are in the illusion relationship where you perceive the absence of conflict as a presence of peace or a lack of problems, and you think that that is a healthy relationship, regardless, you solving these problems is going to make every other problem in your life way easier to solve. When we have problems, whether it's finances, health, things going on in our business or at work or with friends or family, whatever it is, those problems put stress on your relationship if your relationship is already unstable or is not in a place where you guys navigate things in a healthy way together. But if you solve your relationship problems and you get to a strong place where communication is your biggest strength and you guys are able to work together as a team, then it makes all those problems way easier to solve because you can solve them together. When Don and I we finally got through the majority of the work and we felt like we were on the other side of it, that was when financial hardship came. And I had a $500,000 investment go south that put us in a really bad financial position. And if we didn't have the communication and the teamwork to be able to solve it together, and it still wasn't pretty back then, it could have broken us, especially because we weren't married yet. And so for that to happen, there were so many times where it made sense for her to walk away. And so to be in this place where our utilities get turned off and she can't even take a hot shower at the house and our groceries are in a cooler in the kitchen and I'm taking her to the gym every morning to take a hot shower and then borrow their Wi-Fi to take calls with investors from my car, and this like fluid situation that was unraveling that led to us being $1 million in debt to 27 investors, like that is something that does not just impact my business and me, it impacted my relationship heavily. And so because it was this fluid situation that was potentially going to work out in this time period, it didn't make sense for me to go back to coaching at that time. And or at least I didn't believe that because we were all in on this company. And so I ended up driving Uber 12 hours a day from 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. every single day. And then working at a restaurant on the weekends. I had to go back to serving. I hadn't worked for somebody else in, I think, 5 years at this point, and thought that I would never go back to working for somebody else again. And then all of a sudden I had to. And in that time period, what I was making from Uber, and I was working like full time, probably 70, 80 hours a week between the Uber and serving, even that was like barely getting us by with getting the bills paid. And so she had to start picking up gigs caddying, or like golf caddying. And so she would make more money in 4 hours caddying than I would in an entire day, if not sometimes 2 days Ubering. And so it took a huge hit to my ego. And then it took an even bigger hit to my ego when she ended up having to sell her house, her first house, to keep us afloat. And at that time, she was only my girlfriend. But we got through it together. And on the other side of it, because of the profit from selling the house, I had about a month or so to rebuild my coaching business, relaunch it, and then get us back into a place where I could start providing again, which I did, but she helped me do that. And so we did that as a team. And even now with the pregnancy, she's 37 weeks tomorrow, and her blood pressure's been elevated, and our dream, birth went out the window, and we had to start solving it together. And with that, because we can't go the full pregnancy, and we're likely gonna have the baby earlier, the runway that I have to get everything done and built out all my systems and everything in order to be able to take a couple weeks off, that runway got cut in half. And so then all of a sudden it was a matter of like, okay, I need to work really hard. I need to work 2 more days 2 more hours in the evening, and full days on Saturdays instead of half days for this amount of time. So I'm going to need your support in this. What does that support look like in this window? And whether it's making sure all my meals are cooked and prepped, which she already does all the time anyways, whether it's helping me edit videos while I work on other stuff, our ability to solve any problem that we run into, it just happens way easier, and it's far less stressful, and a lot of times more enjoyable and fulfilling because we overcome these challenges together. And so when it comes to priorities and the right solving order, you can absolutely solve multiple problems at the same time in business and in your relationship, but prioritizing solving the problems you have in your relationship, the communication problems, the trust issues, by prioritizing that, it will absolutely make every other problem way easier to solve. Number 14, your ambition will bankrupt your marriage if you do not budget your presence. As men, we make decisions every single day that have trade-offs. And the less you understand the cost of the trade-off, the more it's going to cost you. In 2025, I had the opportunity to work with over 50 men who had built and or exited companies for multiple 8-9 figures, all of them at the cost of their marriage and their relationship with their kids. Now, many of these guys did not end in divorce. Some of them absolutely did. And every single one of them told themselves along the journey that they were doing it for their family. And they told their wives that, and they told their children that. And in the end, they realized that they were actually doing it to pursue significance. They were doing it for themselves. And they also realized that what they built was never what their wife or children asked for. What their wife and children needed most, what they desired the most, was the one thing that they had to compete for the most, their presence. And every single one of these men said that if they understood the cost and the trade-off that they were making that entire time, they would have built their businesses differently. They would have went about all of it differently. And many think that this is an unteachable lesson, that we as men have to learn this lesson on our own, that we got to bang our head against the wall and make this mistake, and only then will we truly learn that lesson. And I don't believe that. This really hit me when I was standing on my mentor's penthouse balcony that he had just purchased from Grant Cardone, as he told me not to make the same mistakes that he did. He told me that he didn't even remember the first 10 years of his first 2 children's lives because he was so busy. He said that he knew that he had put them down for bed and tucked them in and was present for certain things physically, but he didn't have any memories of it. He couldn't recall it because he wasn't truly present. Even if he was there physically, mentally, he was at work. Mentally, he was solving problems in business. And it was something that he deeply regretted. And so he was sharing this with me to try to help me not make the same mistake. All of this taught me that greatness is not one-dimensional. It is not just in business. It made me redefine what greatness is to me. For me to achieve greatness, it has to be not just in business or in my impact or in God's calling on my life, but also it requires me to also be a great father and a great husband and a great leader, which is also what God calls us to do. And so many men struggle with delayed gratification and patience. They want to get there faster. They want to get to the next level sooner. And so they get impatient and they focus on business or this project or work, and they end up neglecting their marriage and their relationship with their kids in order to hit this specific milestone. They said that, and they tell themselves that when they get there, then they'll focus on their marriage or then they'll focus on their kids. The reality is that is a cycle that they fall into that never ends until they are in a position where they are faced with divorce or breakup. I refuse to sacrifice my marriage and my relationship with my son for some business success. So I choose the steady climb instead. I'd rather go slower and not sacrifice my marriage or my relationship with my son and future kids for anything. It's not worth it. And so for me, greatness is across all domains. Kobe Bryant once said, "When I step out onto the court, none of my fans care if I was up all night with my sick daughter. They want 100% of Kobe. And when I'm done with the game and I go home, my daughters don't care how many minutes I played in the game. They want 100% of dad. And when my daughters go to bed, my wife doesn't care how many minutes I played in the game or how many hours I played with my daughters. She wants 100% of her husband." And although this can be a difficult thing to achieve on a daily basis, I believe it is a worthy pursuit every single day. So if your marriage fails, that means your business failed, because the reason why we got into entrepreneurship and business in the first place was for us to achieve time and financial freedom. For what? To be able to spend it, both time and money, on what matters most, which is our family, the people that we love the most, and being able to experience life with them. Number 15, to be a powerful couple, both must maintain their personal power. To maintain your personal power, you have to take radical responsibility for everything that you can control. Your words, actions, reactions, your habits, not just your morning routine, but your habitual ways of communicating, your body language, your living habits. Anything that is truly in your control on a daily basis, you have to be able to take radical responsibility for. Because every time that you blame your wife, just like Adam did in the garden, or you blame your job or business, your schedule, you blame your parents or the government or your childhood, every single time you do that, whatever you point your finger at, you give your power to. What I mean by power is you give away the power that is required to change it. So you essentially are saying, I don't have any power to change this, which is nearly 100% of the time false. So every single time you do this, you're admitting that you have no control over changing this outcome. And in doing that, you lose your power. And when it comes to taking responsibility for the work that we have to do in our relationships, the false belief here is that they need to change first. They need to take responsibility first. So I'm speaking to the man here. You have to lead this, just like everything else. You have to lead taking responsibility in your relationship. There was a time early on where Donna was constantly blaming me, pointing the finger at me or at her childhood or the trauma, and refusing to take responsibility for the part that she was playing and the things that she was in control of. And I did not set a boundary here. I set a standard within the relationship, which was that both of us had to be taking 100% radical responsibility for the part that we play in everything. And I was very firm on this because, and even communicated to her that if she does not start taking responsibility for her part, I would not settle for that and would walk. And it worked. And it wasn't something where this is a non-negotiable, and it wasn't something I was communicating aggressive. I was just honest of, if you don't also do this, then this isn't going to work. And by both of us committing to taking radical responsibility for each of us, for everything that we are in control of, it worked. Every single time that we had a conflict or some issue that we were working through, even if we struggled to take responsibility at first, even if we fell back into the habit of blaming the other person, by the end of it, we were able to look at it and actually take responsibility. And by doing that, we were able to accelerate both the work and the overcoming of the challenges that we had, because we were constantly staying in our personal power and focusing on the things that we could do as individuals to change this. And so this allowed us to do the work in the relationship. Now, I had a saying that she absolutely hated because she just thought it was a little bit more aggressive. And the saying was that everything is all my fault. And this was just my mindset to focus on what I was in control of. And so it helped me by constantly saying to myself, everything is all my fault. If I'm experiencing stress or a perceived negative situation that I don't like, then, and me saying to myself, everything is all my fault. How is this my fault? What parts did I play in creating this scenario or situation? It allowed me to, again, focus on what I can control. And in doing that, I was able to change all of the circumstances that I did not like inside of my relationship or in my business. And of course, sometimes that requires the work from somebody else, especially inside of a relationship. But it allowed me to not focus on what somebody else could do to change it, because I couldn't force them. I couldn't hold them accountable to doing those things as much as I could hold myself accountable to doing the things that I knew would actually change the circumstances. Pair that personal power that I've been able to maintain and continuously build by continuously taking radical responsibility with the power that I have now accessed through my relationship with God, and I feel absolutely unstoppable in being able to overcome any challenge. But when it comes to the relationship, you guys both have to buy in and commit to taking responsibility for the parts that you play. If you can do this, you can overcome anything. But you also have to understand that if you have been in the pattern of blaming for so long, it is going to take time, and it's going to require both of you to offer patience to each other. I'll also add in this bonus here that I forgot I made a mistake with so many times, which was I would take 100% responsibility for the part that I played, but because she wasn't taking full responsibility every single time in the beginning, I would then afterwards point at what she was responsible for. And so as soon as I was done taking 100% responsibility, I would then redirect and point the finger back at her, making it clear what I believed she was responsible for, which is then stealing the opportunity from her for her to take responsibility. It also comes off as an attack. And so this is where it's a standard. You have to do this long enough in your relationship for it to become a standard that you can then hold her to. And in that, if she is struggling to take responsibility, you've had her listen to this podcast, or you've had that conversation with her, and she is committed to taking responsibility for the things that she's in control of, and she's struggling, then it's a different conversation, and it has to be separate from you taking responsibility. And then afterwards, in a separate conversation, you can talk to her to figure out what she believes she is responsible for within that outcome or conflict or whatever it is that is the topic of discussion. I simply asking her, what do you believe you're 100% responsible for in this? And so you have to be able to navigate these two separately solely so that you can still take 100% responsibility without the coping mechanism of shifting the weight back towards her. Now, many of my clients have expressed fear of taking full 100% responsibility for their part and then their wife or spouse just blaming everything on them and not taking responsibility for their part. And this is a valid fear, but if you take responsibility long enough, truly, in order for it to become a standard in the relationship, then it will eventually shift. She will follow suit. And there's definitely certain relationships, especially longer marriages with clients I've worked with, where the habits are so ingrained that it takes a little bit more work and a little bit more facilitation, but it can absolutely be done. If you struggle to do this, or anything that we've discussed at this point for that matter, then hire me. I promise you that it will cost you far less time and money than a divorce or breakup and the countless dinner dates that will come after that, trying to find another woman that will also eventually need you to step up your leadership anyways. So remember, focus on what you can control. If you give away your power, you give away the power to change the outcome. And lastly, number 16, your relationship cannot outgrow you. Every relationship has a ceiling. Most men think that the ceiling is compatibility or chemistry, or something of that nature, but it's not. The ceiling is the man. Your relationship will not rise above your leadership. It will not rise above your emotional regulation. It will not rise above your integrity. It will not rise above your discipline. It will not rise above your ability to stay grounded. It will not rise above your ability to confront truth. It can't, because you are the container. And if the container is cracked, unstable, inconsistent, directionless, the relationship will be unstable. Now let me draw the contrast for you. In my last relationship, on paper, I was successful. I was a detective on the SWAT team in New Orleans. I had gotten Officer of the Year 3 years in a row. I had a great job, stable income, all these things that looked good. But personally, at home, I was drinking every single night. I stopped working out, stopped eating healthy. I lost my discipline, became inconsistent. Whatever presence I did have before was completely lost because I was completely oblivious. Working 80 plus hours a week, not confronting difficult conversations that I knew needed to be had, letting resentment build. Yeah, we didn't fight much, but we also didn't grow much. Sex became once a month. Communication was shallow. Problems weren't being solved. She stopped addressing issues. I stopped leading through them. And eventually, she said that she didn't want to have children with the man I was becoming. That wasn't about compatibility or money or chemistry. That was about trajectory. It was about the man that I was becoming. And that relationship hit the ceiling of who I was at that time. Now fast forward, $500,000 investment goes south. Our groceries are in a cooler in the kitchen. Utilities are off. My wife has to sell her house just to keep us afloat when she was actually just my girlfriend. On paper, circumstances were far worse. But internally, I was disciplined, grounded, leading difficult conversations, learning to stay more composed and have more self-control, taking responsibility, being willing to sacrifice more and more, leaning into growth and healing. It was the same level of hardship, but different man, different result. Instead of resentment, we built trust. Instead of distance, we built intimacy. Instead of stagnation, we built polarity. Instead of collapse, we built strength. The circumstances didn't determine the outcome, the man did. That's the through line. You can change the house, you can change the woman, you can change the income, you can change the city, but if you don't change you, the ceiling doesn't change because your relationship can't outgrow you. It expands at the speed of your growth. It stabilizes at the level of your integrity. It deepens at the depth of your emotional capacity. If you want a great relationship, become a great man. That's the lever. That's the responsibility. That's the opportunity. And that's the final hard truth. Your relationship cannot outgrow you. If you are ready to grow, you know where to go. DylanJWarder.com and book a call with me. If you're ready to grow in your relationship with God, you can go to weaponsforchrist.com. And if you want to help me grow this podcast and get it out to more men, then please like, share, and subscribe and send it to a brother. And for the men who want the scripture that biblically backs every single one of these truths, you can find it in the description. Now go do the work. I'll see you in the next episode.